Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. We're going to be continuing our game development project today. I see that Cheese and Parakeet have joined us. Hello, and welcome. And Sleepyhead. Oh, welcome, everyone. Let's check in with the kitties. We do have Tom and... not Tom. I wish Tom. Rest in peace, Tom. We do have Sky and Ember snuggled up together across from the desk. We have Sammy curled up on the bed. And then we have Sherbet over on the shelf looking nice and loafed. Code time. And hello here and Gamer. Hello. When last we left off, I was trying to come up with a way to override functions at runtime because I don't want to deal with an inheritance tangle. We were getting too many situations where interfaces would be useful, and I don't want to have to try to implement interfaces in a system that doesn't deal with multiple inheritance. This is Code Talk. If you don't understand it, that is fine. We're all learning together. So, what I found is that there is a concept called a function reference variable in Godot, and we should be able to use that in lieu of directly setting the function. We should be able to go into Targeter and say that there is a set direction function reference, and call that instead. Okay, let's just close all of this. Turn off that natural light lamp. Okay, targeters. So the reason that we set into doing this is that there's two distinct type of targets. So I don't know if we have to do .call or if we can just invoke it since it's a function reference. We're going to find out. Also, I don't know if that documentation is out of date. I haven't touched it yet. Okay, so there's not function reference. I think we'll have to use callable. Can we set it up? Okay, so we pass in the object that will be invoking it and the function name that it will call. This part would be unfortunate. I can see that. Budgies are a cute bird. I used to know somebody that raised exotic birds. A blue and gold or a scarlet macaw is intimidating if you're small. But budgies are kind of cute. A bit terrifying beaks wise though. They can shave some skin off, you know. Lambda, that was one of the functions I was trying to remember. That was the word lambda function. So we don't want to custom create a function here. Not like that. Instead, we want a callable of this fashion. So we can use .call, which is still fine. .call is still fine. Callable from callable will be the thing we have to use. Right, Parakeet. That was the error that we're getting in our catalog here. This is a constant, and you can't change it. Ooh. Okay, that would make variable snarf a callable. Okay. Which should still work. Yeah. We just have to make sure that it lines up. I think this is going to be a pattern safety thing. So what if we go into set direction and we call this variant set direction is equal to function that. I think we could do callable. I think we still need to do that. Yeah. We would still need to use .call. And that means defining it explicitly as a callable is a good idea. Let's look up that symbol again. What I'm hoping is that there's a way to define a callable as something that expressly has a series of arguments. But I don't think we can. That is, I'd like to be able to define it and say it has to be a function with these parameters. This is indeed true. Not here. Uh, Getting up and moving is important. Uh, that's one of the reasons that I take the hourly break, is so that I move. The question is, Parakeet, I can define it as a function with those parameters here, but I mean when I subsequently set it to a different function. Uh, can I actually do that correctly? So if I then go into set direction elsewhere, if I do this, um, because I mean, my usage pattern is going to have that. What I'm looking for, what I'm thinking of, Parakeet, is when I set this, I want whatever I set it to be constrained to whatever the initial parameters of set direction were. So if set direction has an entity and a float as its parameter, then I want any other callables that I replace set direction with to have an entity and a float only as their parameters. Um, I would be okay if there were overridables here, but I don't want any function to not accept it. And I don't want I don't want any function to have a different set than that, so that they can be used interchangeably. Effectively, what I want to do is just replace them with these things. Because if I replace them with these, I can just say set it equal to this other thing. And it would stomp this one, which is fine. Thinky, thinky, think. Once I get this stuff retuned, I can show you folks where we are. That hasn't really changed, but I will need to test it to ensure that I haven't broken things. Because I think I broke the spiral in the case that it has a target object. Thinking back on that, I don't think I did that right. So I don't think I can. Let's just double check here. Okay, this forces some particular arguments into it as subsequent arguments. This is what we're going to have to use. Because the existing methods should already define that, but I don't know if I need to set up the function differently. As in, do I need to set up the callable to have that first? So I really don't want to have to pass in method name strings. Okay, let's see. Day's been going pretty well, Ice Drake. Day's been going pretty well. We're still on the callable replacement thing here, the function replacement thing. Okay, what if? We have a set direction default. Which has this. Which just does nothing. And if instead we have this is a callable which uses self and then set direction default. This should be a callable. Yeah. I think I'm just going to have to accept that it will explode if you do it wrong, and that's not a terrible thing. GDScript doesn't really have a try-catch, and that's not the worst thing in the world. Using error states as the try-catch pattern of error states can be dangerous. It can add some durability to a program as far as it not crashing, but that can create a circumstance where something goes wrong and the program just blithely continues on, even though that thing that went wrong puts it in a bad state that should not continue. I just do that. Yeah, good. I don't want to mess with the method name. I don't want to have anything like that. So then if I go into catalog, I can say callable that. Let's reload the project. Okay, okay. They're making progress. Now, target direction random. So we're going to go into game. We're going to make sure that we only load the mouse weapon. All of our little debug variables here. I'm going to remove everything else just to narrow it down. Does it explode? And it did. Okay, this is targeters by default have an entity and a direction. So I think set directions default should be this. So, which means in target entity, we don't do that. Still broken. Which means it uses entity to move. I strike as many as possible. I want, if I had my way on this, the likelihood that you would get the same permutations of movement or even see the same list of movement, unordered list of movement types or of modules should be very small. In catalog, I think that's where our problem happens. Stop. We've got random directions. Okay, that is working. That is working. Yes. So that's random direction. Random direction functional. Now, the difference with a trackable is that it's going to use something a little bit different. If we look at track random enemy. So the trackable's different in that we need lost target and we need turn rate. Giga black holes everywhere. I don't know. Random perk to what was the perk called that essentially did a double power on all explosions? I can't remember what it was called. I think it was just more power. The most lethal of sudden perks. Strength, there we go. Oh, we had so many deaths because of that. I think Pirate Software put out a short where they got caught by that too. Chat said random perk, and you can see right before he throws a bomb, that perk drops. And it blows him up from a screen away because he used a black powder bomb with it. For those wondering, this is in reference to the game Noita, which is an inspiration for the weapon system that we're using here. Okay, so a track... a tracking targeter is a targeter that has some extra values. Yes. Do I like jazz? It's okay. I like, when it comes to that kind of music, I generally prefer a little more somber. So, Sleepyhead, uh, have you seen the new... I don't know if it's bubbled up as widespread, but the most recent Final Fantasy XIV content has an opponent that is essentially a sort of pop idol bee that has been getting a lot of attention lately. So Ice Drake, the first coding that we did that was stream related, it happened off stream, but I made a Noida mod, like fully customized, not a total conversion, but a lot of spells and perks and whatnot were changed and replaced. The voting system was largely swapped out. In fact, we eventually had it integrated with an entirely unique voting system. It kept track of it itself. The integration was kind of janky from the way it had to be done because of the way that Noida implemented Lua script, but the sprites that I'm using originate there, from the art that I used for that mod. It included fun things like orbital strikes, rapid fire orbital strikes were very popular. The goal of the runs was to get to the bottom and beat the boss, because if you beat the boss, I had coded it so it would put you back at the top at a higher difficulty immediately, and you would resume and try to beat the boss again. The secondary goal was to see how low I could get the frame rate in a single attack, and how big a damage number we could create. I think the biggest we ever got was in the quintillions. I will see your cat in the box and raise you a cat in the box. So in a tracking targeter, we have some extra stuff. Could we just wrap that into targeter? It was a private mod, yes, James. That is correct. Never released it because it was bound very tightly with this community. That is true, Ice Drake. Thinking on it, that is a really big number for a game to handle. That means in the background, in the C code, they were using some big number containers. Really big number containers. What would that have to be? Because you could do negative damage. Man. What's bigger than a double? How big can a double get? It does create some existential issues, does it not? Not here? When you suddenly stop existing for periods at a time. Oh, hello, Sherbet. Oh, he sees a fly. Doing that little chirp sound. And he knocks something over, making a jump for it. You can see Sky and Ember got startled by the resultant tumble of things off of a shelf. Just put that back where it goes. Okay. Where was I? Thinking. Oh, okay. Oh, we need to handle that in apply template too. Callable from self from template dot set direction dot get method. Okay. So when we initially set it in the catalog, we direct the reference to the function on this object. Call that object. Yeah, padding out to incredibly large numbers is usually the way to go. I mean, 1 to the 308th is pretty darn big. So when I set up a callable like this, what I want to do is I've got a template object coming in. That template object has a callable set on it, but that callable calls the method in that object. So this thing's get set direction calls its set direction. So if this one just set the callable equal to what the template had, then it would call this one's method. It would mess with this one's variables. What we're doing with this is that we're essentially saying use ourself, but use the same method. It's not ideal, but we need to make sure that this thing is what it's reset to. Like this targeter. If we add turn rate and lost target into this, then we can apply other logic to it. Because we can set it up so something never changes lost target. If lost target is never true, then we never need to worry about the lost target logic triggering. But tracking... I think having a tracking targeter is still potentially a good idea because it has some fundamental differences in behavior. Let's look. In particular, so need to update entity shouldn't be this if we're not tracking. It should be a different default. Additionally, so this is updated properly by having the set to. We could have this be a set direction track target. Oof. Hello, Sherbet. But its set entity is one of the things that gets trickier. Because in a regular one, we don't necessarily need to update direction. We won't be calling this in that logic, or we don't need to. What this does is it calls the set entity of target random enemy, which is just get random enemy. What I'm trying to do here is think of see if I can think of a way to set it up so I don't have to do a series of 2 calls in a tracking function, that it works fully by itself, that it's encapsulated. Because, let's zoom in a bit here. Just so. This guy is how tracking works. Is if we've not lost our target, and we don't have an entity, then we're going to try to get an entity. But there are going to be some types of targeting that don't care about entities. So we wouldn't do this. But a tracker does care about this. Same with set direction. There are going to be some of them that don't care if there's an entity, so we would not be updating that. I think I can still do it, it's just that we need to make sure that we've formatted it properly. Because in set entity, you would have I would set it to a tracking, and if I set it to tracking, I need a set tracked entity. Yes. Yes, so if we look at callable in one of the constructors, right here, this is the constructor that we're dealing with. The object that will make the call and the name of the method to call. Hello, Flowers. Welcome, welcome. We're doing some programming. This is game development. You won't see the game for a little bit today, because at least a little bit today, because we are elbow deep in some logic. No. So what we're doing by default, yes. By default, yes. But by doing it this way in a set template, we are making sure that we are setting the function to the method of the same name, but in this object, not in the template object. We're essentially creating a local copy of the method. Yeah, we got to do this song and dance. I don't like it, but at least I don't have to enter a string here. Like, I don't have to type the string. Because if I had to do a string constant, it's gonna explode eventually. Okay. So next, what I want to do is to get tracking bound up in Targeter. So that then I don't have to have tracking as a separate type of Targeter. But I may still want to do that. Because then it can be explicit that this is a tracking targeter. It behaves differently. Because to bind it up into targeter, we still have to have tracking targeter specific logic, which means you still have to do paired setup. If you don't do the paired setup, then it doesn't work right. So going in and saying, like, having a pattern for trackers means that I'm only adding the logic relevant to it, that targeters don't have bits and pieces that are not relevant to them. Okay. So we are going to make a new script that is a tracking targeter. And it will inherit targeter. Okay. And then a tracking targeter has this as an add-on to it. And in particular, it has another variable that targeter doesn't, and that is going to be a different default for its... I think we should do an actual init in this. So that's default. If we do set direction here, instead of doing it here, we are going to do that in init. Way we don't have this. Piano hit just right there for a moment. Come on. There we go. Hammer 3. So tracking targeter is going to have a different init. I need to be careful about this. Okay. This actually overrides it. Because I don't want target direction to be set the way it is. We're going to do that for a moment, though. So now we need... There's that default. These are still useful universally. Again, our goal is to reduce the number of these inherited classes because they were starting to get tangled with each other, and that's a problem. Like, track random enemy would share a great deal of logic with track the player, or similar. And I don't want that overlap of logic. That's waiting for an issue of missing stuff. So in apply template, we are going to call the super function. And we're going to say that the turn rate template dot turn rate. Variable converted as a So, had to comment that because if I didn't comment that, there was an error on the line, which means the script file would not parse, which means it could not define that class. Converted is a tracking targeter, which is equal to template to converted turn rate. We do not keep track of lost target. We need initialize to do this. Oh, the super function. Lost target is equal to false. Hello, Tass. Hello. We are in the process of changing our targeters to use overridable callables instead of using class inheritance on them, so that the function usage is modular, that I'm just swapping those out. I can still use class inheritance for some of it, such as with a tracking targeter, because those have different variables and they have some fundamentally different functions to call. So setting them up a little bit differently is fine. So then we still have set direction and all of that. So we have a variable here where we have a set entity, but what we want is the tracked entity. Kebab, we are coding a game. Coding a game. So this is the default entity. It's not tracked entity. This is a tracking set entity default. Okay. Kebab, it's more understanding that a lot of terms like that, you can attempt to just ignore them. It's not universally safe. But within your sentence was a, what are you doing? It's essentially, what is you doing? I often have to look at meme-laden sentences is essentially Mad Libs and look for the replaceable words and just swap them out with a blank. Set tracked entity default. Pass. Moment though, it is not actually a pass. It has these same things. Does not use. How long have I been coding the game? We are on our 64th stream, I think. Did I do that wrong on Twitter? I think I did that wrong on Twitter. Processing. We're on the 63rd or 64th stream, so about like 180 hours. Plus a bunch of research and poking. And hello, CL. We'll have to get to that later. Actually, just a moment. Yeah, okay. There we go. There we go. Why is there a cat up there? Because that's one of my 5 cats, and I like them. And so I will I will have them impose upon you. That one is Sherbet. He is one of my 2 youngest. Let's see how many others we can spot. Should be at least 2. Oh, we got 4. Mason is not currently visible, but we have Sky up in his tree, Ember across from the keyboard, Sherbet over on the white table, and Sammy curled up on the bed. So tracked entity default does nothing. We'll need to override that. And then we need a method which is a variable set tracked entity, which is a callable. Move delta. Okay, and then in our init, set direction is instead. All right, we need a set entity converted into a callable. Set entity does nothing by default, so this is now instead a variable, which is a callable. Now set entity I think somebody earlier was talking about pet parakeets. No, they had budgies. Not here had budgies. Different critter, different critter. A callable, which is made from set entity default. And then when we call set entity, okay, so then in a tracker, in a tracking targeter, the game is a bullet heaven style game, Kebab, like things like Vampire Survivors. The hook for this one is that the weapons are meant to be modular. So instead of just upgrading a weapon linearly, add another point kind of thing, it will be, I get a new module, slap that in. So some relation to things like bioprototype, really. Which was kind of fun, but I feel like it started to get limited. Entity is equal to callable from tracking set entity default. That extra paran removal is Godot engine trying to be helpful. It usually isn't. Set entity is not constant value. Oh, we need to reload. Anytime you mess with the signature of a class, you need to reload usually. Kebab, we are using GDScript in the Godot engine, so the scripting language unique to Godot engine. You can use C#. At least some of the stuff that I'm eventually going to do is going to be in C#. I want to have things like a streaming integration into it, and that's definitely going to be in C#. I don't even know if you could do it in GDScript, but I know I'd probably end up using libraries for it, and those would be in C#. So then in tracking targeter, we have that. Set tracked entity. Is now going to be set to set tracked entity default. Okay. So this should still work. Okay, random directions. So then in track random enemy, our set direction is going to be a tracking set direction default, which will be face target here. So we're going to take that, we're going to copy it into tracking target, go all the way down here, and we're going to do tracking set direction default. Just so. In the past of my mental engram, I did a lot of programming. Professionally. So then in a track random enemy, I need to override set tracked entity default. I also need to change the... Okay. So the need updates need to be updated as well. So need update direction needs to turn into a callable, and need to update entity needs to turn into a callable. All by myself, Kebab, and I would say more than 90% of the coding happens on stream. This is real time, so a lot of the discussion is stream of consciousness. There's a lot of how will I do this and why doesn't that work, or even better, why does that work? That's not supposed to work. Okay, so need to update entity needs to have a copy, which is need to update entity default. So in targeter, We have need to update entity, and we have need to update direction. These need to turn into defaults. It's taken some time, and we are learning as we go. Learning as we go. Okay, so now you are a variable, which is a callable. You are a variable. Which is a callable. And thus you need to be set in our init. Who is equal to need date entity default. Let's need date direction default. Ta-da. All. All. Well, this is kind of convenient, actually. Well, no, I could have done that, but to begin with. Oh well, still useful. All. All. Did I break it? Didn't break it. So what we're doing to make that happen is target random direction has this. Set direction to random when we set the direction. We don't need to do the self thing because the self is specified here. It's when we're setting the template that we have to do the extra song and dance. But we have now changed this from being its own specific class to being a generic class where we swap things out. Well, thank you, Kebab. Thanks for swinging through, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. What is left of it, as based on what you were saying. Thinky think, thinky think. So now this is a tracking targeter. Set tracked entity default is going to be set to the targeter part of it, but it just needs to set it to set entity random entity. Okay. So target random enemy is going to be a targeter. Catalog name, same thing. enemy. And let's see, its set direction. Need update direction is the same thing as default. Its entity okay, yeah. Set direction default. Its targeter dot set entity is equal to a callable or targeter dot set entity to random enemy, just so. Close parens because Godot engine wants to be helpful. Hey there, Erebus. Welcome. We are making progress. So much progress. Items, we're going to go to our wind up mouse. Instead of random direction, we're going to say random enemy. And it gonna explode. Movement is a null here. Calling get item on homing mouse, and the template is null, which means the catalog did not handle it correctly. Oh. Movement type is not. This is move. Not random direction. Track enemy. Just target track random enemy. No, we want target random enemy, which means we need a move for that in the load items. Don't have a move for that. Okay, then in targeting, so this is a tracking targeter. It has a catalog and a type name. Track random enemy. And its targeter set tracked entity is equal to a callable, which is targeter dot set tracked entity default. Need to update entity. Okay. We need tracking need to update entity, and tracking, those need to be set. No? Oh no, but we need it in a tracking targeter. We need to actually set these. Tracking. Default. Reload the project. Be-do. Okay, they don't seem to be tracking, so let's check our catalog and make sure when we load items, the mouse is using a move track enemy, which is track enemy, which is target track random enemy. Which is right there, which its tracked entity is set tracked entity default. Which isn't right, it is that entity random enemy. So this will track and it determines its enemy type by random enemy. So we should see these little guys start to pivot. Which they are not. You are seeing one of the weapons right now. It's never being called. It's never being called, which means face target is never being called. We have no target in this scenario. We're going to add some more weapons once we have more movement types to add into weapons. At the moment, the focus is adding ways to change the weapons. So our initial testing will largely be things that move in a very predictable fashion so that we can modify them. There will likely be a debugging weapon that just moves to the right so that we can then mess with it. Because the modifiers are the core things. So it's never setting entity. So set tracked entity should be calling into targeter set entity to random enemy. The inventory is the weapons modifier. So there is a little mouse here. That is the mouse weapon that we are seeing. Entity random enemy. Otherwise, all the defaults should be there. Targeter. No entity. And it's set tracked entity. I could use a new instance here. Yeah, set tracked entity is a callable. It is set. This is good. So then inside targeting tracker, where we set tracked entity. Tracking set entity default. Yep. Sure, but tends to move around when he needs to toast. Okay, we should have lost target is false and entity is null. So we go into here. Now we call set tracked entity, which is set tracked entity default. That should not be true. Because this is track random enemy, and track random enemy should have or entity set to random enemy. So in some earlier testing and in some subsequent testing that we will be seeing in the near-ish future, you'll see the inventory being utilized. There are, the last time we were testing it, there were objects in it that we were able to swap around to change the way the mouse moved. So our targeter as a set tracked entity, and we're going to replace it with set entity to random enemy. So it feels like we're getting the wrong one in track random enemy. Okay, we're gonna clone it. So I think that might be where we're going wrong here. That's right, that's where we're going wrong. Okay. Because when we clone it, we aren't setting that up right. Clone. When we apply template, we aren't updating set direction. We need to update all of the things in init. That. Need update entity. Need update direction. Okay, and then in tracking targeter in apply template, we call the super one. And we have set tracking entity equal to a callable, which is self, and then converted dot set. Get method. Okay, that should clone it properly now. Tracked. That. Now they should start to change position as we go. Yep. See them rotating. Figuring out what kind of game you want to make is the first step in making a game. Hello, frog. Okay, so we have the tracking mouse. Now we need to go back into our catalog and we need to get the rest of this stuff going. So type name, and its set entity is set random enemy. We're okay there. So if you want to use Game Studio Cheese, then you are limited to 2D. Though I suspect you could probably approximate it with some shenanigans at the code level. Okay, and then if we make a movement type, we're going to have a special one that is constant move right, which is a string. It's equal to move right, which I think I already have in here somewhere. It's probably mirroring that. Okay. So you type a move straight line. No icon, it is move right. Okay, then if we go into the items, we go into the mouse, it will do move to the right. Always moves right. Okay. Now we go into our game and we're going to add spread pattern, burst pattern, spiral, track, curve, circle. S-curve. Here, let's remove the blobs for now. They will interfere with the test. So if we move S-curve, it do that. If we move straight line instead of S-curve, it should... Oh, that's random direction. Okay, so this is... We can see some of the random directions being impeded by move to the right. If we move in an orbit, we're going to get kind of like a circle that does this. That orbit's not set up right. Okay, there's our spiral out. Here's our burst of 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We're getting a slight wiggle on the z-axis, which is weird. Here's our spread, which is off kilter a little bit. Something wrong with spread because it should always be moving straight to the right. But if I put the spread on there, it's tilted a little up. That's weird. I think there's a math error there. So we need to fix the math error in spread. We need to look at the circle because it is not moving in a circle. It is spiraling out still. But S-curve doing what it's supposed to do. Burst doing what it's supposed to do. Yep. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so we have some... We have made progress. So now these target random enemy, track random enemy, those aren't needed anymore. So we're going to take a short break. I'm going to make a commit, and then we'll get back to it. So be right back, folks. And we are back. And I forgot to make that commit. And we're missing a kitty cat. Okay. So we need to look at spawners targeting, spawn points, modifiers, positioning modifiers, spread. Okay, so something's a little bit off here. Let's think through it. So when we determine it, if we have greater than 360, we crop it down to 360. And the arc is 360. Otherwise, the arc is affected by the scale adjustment in the scale multiplier. So base spread arc is like, hey, it's 90 degrees kind of thing. Then our spread angle is what are the max bullets. So let's... Oop, okay. So our spread arc is 90, and so 90. Our spread angle should now be 45, I think. Ah, 30, because there's 3 projectiles. And then, okay. No, this doesn't math. Okay. This is where we have our problem. We're not mathing right. So, we have a 90-degree arc. We want to fire at, essentially, with 3 bullets, negative 45, 0, and 45. So that'll cover a 90-degree arc with 3 shots, one of them going in a straight line. We always want it to go in a straight, the middle one to go in a straight line when you have an odd number. If you have an even number, the middle 2 will spread out from that central straight line. You never want to spread with an even number because that makes it less usable in whatever direction it's firing. Whatever targeting direction it's firing, an even number throws it off because whatever is straight in front of that target will get missed. Okay, so how do we do? Yeah, so the arc is 45 when we have 3. So it's -1. don't want it to just be 1. We need to have a catch case here. If max bullets is less than or equal to 1, else do that. Spread angle is equal to 0. If you only have one straight line, otherwise it's divided by max bullets minus 1. Straight line, spread shot. There we go. Bursting spread shot. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Spreading burst. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Spiraling. Spiraling right-centered, moving right, so the spiral is being distorted as it's getting pushed this way. Burst shot spiral, same thing. Sorry, spread shot. So here's a bursting spiral, so we just get the 3 in a row. So we saw the spreading one. So let's do bursting and then spread. If we throw a random direction in here, this random direction will interfere with move right. Sometimes it goes along with it and it speeds it up to the right. Sometimes it will go counter to it and slow it down or twist it in one of the other directions. If we move it after spiral, then the spiral will influence it first. Okay, so we've got the spread shot working again. Good. Now we need to look at spiral. Sorry, we need to go into our catalog. We need to look at load movement. Oops, that would have caused a problem. Move player is a special case. You're going to move that all the way up to the top of the list accordingly. So I put that there. It's debugging and things like spirals, so that when I'm calculating the spiral, if it's based off of a target of move right. Actually, no. Target right is for debugging and similar. When I move spiral, I target right. Move circle's max radius shall now be 2 squares. So when we move in a circle, we should get a downward loop, distorted to the right here. And then it arcs up. So it goes as high as 2 squares up and as low as 2 squares down. So this is move right with a circle. So the next thing is we want to make sure that with a target, we are going to have a new one, which is right and move player. These are special cases. Well, move player is a special case. Move circle, I don't know if we're ever going to have that one actually be true. More likely it will be orbit thing. String is equal to move orbit player. So we're going to take move circle. Move orbit player. Target player. Then we go into targeter, and we need a set entity. We're going to move set entity to random up here with set entity default, just for sequencing. Layer. Layer factory. So then when we are going to go into our catalog and we're going to go to where we load targeters, we have target right. Now we're going to add target player right there. And we'll use target random direction as a template. Targeter type player. Set entity equal to targeter. Set entity. Entity player. Does not set the direction. Okay, so now we go into move orbit player. We have target player. Then we go into, hello Jim, welcome, welcome. Got a couple of flies have gotten into the factory here, and Sherbet's watching them. Please don't jump onto my headrest from there. Oof. Correct, Jim. You are on the short view. There should be a pinned link to widescreen. Okay, so then we go into game, and instead of move circle, we are going to say move orbit player. Moves to the right. It is distorted right. It should start coming back. It's trying. Double kitty, Jim. Okay, so this isn't what we want it to do. So let's instead go into the catalog. And we are instead going to, when we load the items, we are not going to load any movement at all. Yep, Sky and Ember sometimes snuggle up. Sherbet has wandered off, so he is not visible, but we have 4 of 5. Sky and Ember snuggled up, and then Mason and Sammy having bath time there on the bed. Okay, mouse does nothing by default. Now we're going to say orbit the player. Is not right. How about spiral? I mean, cat's gonna cat there, Jim. Okay, that's direction to the entity. We need to make sure in spiral that we are accounting for okay, if we don't have a direction, it's right. Okay, we're going to leave that. We're going to say if entity if targeter dot entity, then target direction is equal to right. Then this is else. If there is an entity, we don't care what direction the targeter says to use. We keep that for a spiral for now. Okay, there's some curvature there. That's weird. The catalog. Loading movements. It is a move spiral. It should be 30 degrees at a time growth rate doesn't really... Well, it does play into it. Max radius is 2 squares, so it should stop there, but it should still expand out effectively a spiral. So why it not? Let's find out. That seems correct. How is movement rate 0? Oh, that's because that's the initial movement. So the initial move is 0 because that's a... It's not actually 0. It's a very, very, very small number. Just the monitor here will not show really small numbers. It'll just truncate them, which is not good, but target direction is to the right. The prior point is now rotated, which is now pointing nowhere. Oh. But how? Oh, because we don't have a radius yet. We don't have a radius. So now prior point is something. Okay. So it should be facing right and down. We check the max radius. I should store this off somewhere. I don't need to keep checking it. Like, I keep reconfiguring it. It doesn't need to be reconfigured. This will happen at init. Actually, no. No, I do need to keep checking it because these could change. Like you mentioned, the thought of having something that gets like bigger over time. There could be a movement modifier that increases the adjustment in the multiplier over time. So, like a sine wave getting, having its amplitude increase or decrease over time kind of thing. Radius plus equals move rate. Correct. If we have a max radius, we truncate the radius. Angle change, our base angle change. What are we at there? It's 30. Last angle is now updated. Last angle is 2. Oh, wait a minute. That doesn't seem right. How could that be 2? Because delta is... That's not right. That should be like 1. Yeah, angle change is 1. Okay, but that's potentially iterations there. Okay, okay, we're gonna keep rolling with it. And that's where we're gonna truncate last angle based on number of iterations. So iterations should be 0 here. Iterations. Gotta update that spelling. And now we get the rotation here. Target direction rotated. So the prior point is that. Now we've updated the last angle, the new angle to use. So we get our next point. 0.56. It's aiming further right and down as far as the points. To move. Is in that direction. So it should be right and down a little bit, is where it's trying to move. So we have an entity. We get the target's position, which should be 0, 0. Yep, the player hasn't moved, so their position is 0, 0. So we're determining we should be at this. Which is adjusted. Our target point is adjusted. Oh, see. That's part of our distortion there. Okay. This is not correct because next point is a zero-centered vector. So it's not position adjusted. We need to use the entity to move's position here. We weren't adjusting the next point. Okay, still throwing them off. Hey there, Zane. Welcome, welcome. It's not prior point. It's not prior point. It is entity to move. Its position plus prior point. Direction to. Which should actually just be, should be at minus entity to move's position plus prior point. How are you doing today, chat? How are we doing? Okay, it's doing what it's supposed to. Now we start orbiting them. And they're gone. Gone. Zoom. That's not right. We don't care about that. So wherever we are, there's a spot that we should be. Nope, that's still wrong. Should be at. That should be normalized. Okay, it's not normalized as it is. Let's fix that. Okay, it wasn't normalized. Okay, and they're freaking out a little bit. Okay, so this is the orbiting player. We do get a distortion here if I'm moving, and I don't really want that. I want it to be able to catch up. So I think we're going to change it to this. Copy this, comment that. To move is it should be equal to should be at. No, should be equal to this. Okay, there's orbital movement. Let's put a fan on them. We need to alter. They do need to respect the direction coming in. They need to respect the direction coming in. Because then if I fan them out... No? Okay, we still need... That can still give us a 0 or a weird number. Okay, they're spawning right on us, so we have 0. We don't have a target direction. Okay, that's the problem, is we're getting a 0. And because of that, we're going to turn it into right, which means it will always use right when it spawns. So the cone isn't getting influenced. Actually, no, it should still be affected. It should still be affected. The target direction will get altered on a subsequent one. So that came through is right. So now we have a target or direction, and the target direction should be... No, it's still 0. It's still 0. Because the targeter... If the direction to the player is 0, then target player is reporting 0. That is true. That should be true. Its direction to the player is 0. And I don't know that we want a movement overriding its targeter. But it's going to happen right here. Direction to target direction. Orbiting. There we go. Add a little burst in there. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Add a bit of a sine wave into it. Okay, we need to change this. So the orbit is forcing it. The orbit is forcing it into an absolute. We need to adjust that. We don't want it going in an absolute. So I think the orbit needs to have an actual speed above and beyond the angle rotation. Because we can't use an absolute tick position like that. There's an implied speed of rotation that I think we actually need to respect here. because effectively this is constantly correcting it. This to move is absolute. It's putting it back where it thinks it should be, and we need it to essentially be able to lag here, as in it just points it where it should be and tries to move it in that direction. So I think we need to put this back, as in it is able to lag. It is able to fall behind. So this is preserving the same rotational speed that it used to. So if I put the orbit on here, it can only course correct as fast as it would normally rotate. We get this jitter, we need to fix that, but okay. So with this pattern, the sine wave can work. Now what we need to do is get it so the movement doesn't jitter around. Sine wave is going to look weird as it rotates like that. But hello, Lunar. Welcome, welcome. It has no direction, so it's not doing that. Let's put you in here. So the speed of rotation is being preserved, but we're also falling behind a little. So here, let's times move length. And then we have a growth rate in here. So this is our movement rate. We also need to truncate this. That's actually a problem. This shouldn't be just the length of to move, because that could only be off by a little bit. So we need to cap this plus this at the length of the difference between this guy and this guy. Currently, so this is our current position. So we know that. We want to get the length of this vector. So we're going to get 2 should be at by itself. Is a float is equal to that dot length. We don't want it to be this same speed. We want whichever is... Oh, man. We don't want it to jitter, and we want it to accept what it's got. So what we want to do is let it move as fast as it normally would. Let's halt there for now. Normalized. Let's just put that where it is currently. We'll get you rotating. It jitters a lot. Yeah, because the speed is too fast. It's rotating it and saying you should be here, but it's kind of wiggling around because it's moving too quickly in that point. Let's do that again. Here and S-curve. Okay, so we need to truncate the new speed to the position. So we know where it should be. If we just use this, then it will fall behind. Part of the problem is we're not actually rotating, or we're not moving it around the circle. We're moving it to a point on the circle. Yeah, it's wiggling at that point because it's the adjustment it needs to make is too small compared to the distance that it would normally go. So it's going to try to go this fast. What we want to do is say if this is greater... Oh, because this is where it should be. I'm sorry, it should be at, is where it's supposed to be. If this is greater, then we're just going to use its length. Otherwise, we'll keep it here. We're going to change this around because these are overly expensive here. Orbiting. Okay, it's being distorted. We don't want to force it into position, but we also want it to be able to get there faster. Okay, it's able to adjust. Now let's put the sine curve in here. Now, these should rotate in a circle, but it's going to fight as it goes. So the spiral is tightened compared to normal. So here's the regular spiral. See how it's going further out. If I put in the orbit is going to fight the spiral. So we're spiraling and then orbiting. So it's starting to pivot off, and we're getting about here. So we spiral after the orbit. So we can see the orbit is taking precedence. We're getting that hard angle there. We're still hitting about the same place. The spiral is... we're getting about the same result. There isn't a strong distortion happening here. So that's good. That's good. So now let's put our position adjuster in there. Still getting what we should. Oh, there we go. Throw in some random direction. So the random direction is in there, and we're going to get distortion into the pattern, or we should be getting more distortion into the pattern than what we're getting, but random direction is being kind of suppressed here, which isn't correct. So let's get these out of here because they distort what we can see. So the random direction is not influencing that. This... Oh, because it can't. It can't, because it's locking on to me. Now you can see it. When I'm moving and it's trying to move to catch up, random direction messes with it. So here, let's go into our catalog, and we have movement. We are going to say it moves real fast. It's essentially orbiting every 2 seconds. So now we put that move random direction in there. And it's turning fast enough that it's overriding it a little bit now. We do 3 at a time. So a slower rotation, the speed of this rotation is increasing the vector that it applies. It is a very overpowering vector. Same if we make the growth rate like 3. So that's 3 squares almost all at once. We put in this orbit and it's going to zip right out there. Throw that spiral on there. The spiral will eventually win out. Because it increases in power, but because it's moving so hard on the circle, you can see that it's wiggling on the edge, but the projectile doesn't live long enough to get there. Yep. So this is us being able to see some of that interaction logic. Because this orbit is so strong of a pull, it is constraining the spiral. So let's go in and let's go into our debugging here. And we're going to give ourselves 3 track enemy is what we had. That'll be interesting. So again, the mouse has no default movement. Now it is orbiting the player. And orbiting the player is a very strong modifier. You can see the sine wave can hardly do anything to it. They're kind of wobbling back and forth in the arc there. And a sine wave before motion doesn't do much. Let's add a bunch of them here. But, so we'll take those out. Now we're going to put a spiral here. So again, they don't live very long. If we double the spirals up. So you can see there's more twisting to the motion here because there are enough spirals applying force to it that it eventually pushes against the orbit. And the more spirals we would have, the more apparent that would be. Okay. Let's get to some interesting stuff here now. We're going to have the blobs in. So this is 1 a second. Let's do 1 every 2 seconds so we can really see what's going on here. And we're going to go into our catalog. So this is Orbit Player. Just for the time being, actually, just to make it quick, we're going to move Orbit Player, and instead of Target Player, we're going to target a random enemy. No mice. There's a blob. Nyom. And then they lose their target, so they just hang out where they were. It is possible that the spiraling projectiles lose their target because they collide with it. Now, we are seeing some flaws in the targeting logic because right there, they're retargeting. They should not be retargeting, which is a problem. But we have targeted orbiting going on, and this illustrates a valid modifier. This illustrates a valid modifier. Let's put you after this. So something in the targeter logic is not resetting when we're applying the template. Apply the template. We also need to make sure we're calling get entity and get direction. Instead of calling into entity directly. So why is it reacquiring a target? What that could mean is instead of in the template logic, it's in the actual tracking logic. So there's a point in this where it says, no, I should reacquire a target. So we have lost the target. So we haven't lost the target, but we don't have an entity. We'll clear out the entity. As soon as we've lost target, so if we don't have an entity and we haven't lost target yet, then we update the entity. Then if we don't have one, we null the target. So this is where it should clear that. Is we check if the entity's alive. But I think we need a function that is validate entity, where we're checking to see, is this entity valid? Because if it's not, then we should clear it, no matter what. Entity. Hello, Lil. Welcome. Joining us for our game dev stream. I think we're going to end up running long today. And welcome back, Cheese. We're able to return is an entity that's equal to entity by default. We're going to return to return. Actually, it's going to equal to null to begin with. If entity and not entity alive, then we lost target, and entity is equal to null. Else, we return is equal to entity. Whole bunch of them so we can really see it when the entities get killed. Okay, we are getting retargeting. Still getting retargeting. So in our need update entity, so if we lost the target, we're not even going to get into here. You have, Lil? You wrote that as a question, so have you? Okay. Current entity is an entity is equal to get valid entity and not current entity. We start orbiting, we make a bunch of them so it's very visible when they retarget. Nope, still retargeting. No, it's if you would. That's a self-promotion kind of thing, Lil. If it is a game that you think we might like to play, there is a suggestion box on the Discord that you could suggest, that you could put the suggestion in. Okay, if it's not a game, if it's not... Alright, let's see here. So this is being overridden. So we set the entity. If we don't get an entity, then we want to set lost target. How we do? So this is generally, I think, part of our problem surface here. Let's... So we don't override entity because set entity and need update entity should be kept default. It's set tracked entity that really needs to change. But that could also change. Oh. Okay, so we need to fix retargeting. We need to fix retargeting because it's not supposed to. Which means we have a flaw in the code that says, I had an entity. But something went wrong with it. It is here that we can run into our problem. So we lost target. If we don't get anything, we have no entity and we have lost target. We never want hello, Delusion, and let's see here. The distance to the enemy isn't really the issue. The problem is that we're getting another entity. So when we isolate this, right now it just gets a random one when it comes into existence. Once this one is dead, we should never again try to track one. We should just stay where we are, because we don't. This particular type of targeting does not retarget. There will be kinds that do. Yeah, it's not supposed to retarget. If it was supposed to retarget, we're still 50% wrong on that. So I want to get a valid entity. If we have one, but it's not alive, it's lost. Now, this might be part of our problem, is that if it's dead and we've already checked, no, it should constantly be reassessing, but it's possible that that entity gets reused at just the wrong moment. I think we need to subscribe to that entity as soon as we get it. So function this is a callback. Let's see here. It is so this target died should be a callable as well. Oh. Because if the target died, we might not want to lose. We might not want to say never retarget. As soon as the target dies, we might say retarget. As in, every time we try to move. Right, Delusion. Right. I think that's our issue. There is technically a window of opportunity for the entity object to be reused before we check the targeting. And if the entity is reused, it's alive again. So we haven't lost our target. Go get that one. And since the whole cluster of them, when they're emitted at once, are using the same target entity, they would all be affected at once. So that's why we would suddenly have that everybody pivot and go after a different one. So else. So we do entity dot. Let's look at our entity object here. We have a signal in here somewhere. Here we go. If it emits a remove me. Okay. That in the entity, didn't I? Remove me signal name. Entity dot remove me signal name. Callable. And we're going to call you entity. Delusion, I am using GD script largely because I just wanted to learn a new language as part of this process. Just go all in. Godot also does a pretty good job of having its script interact with its world objects as far as performance. You can exceed those performance benefits if you really tighten it up in C#. And C# already does better with raw computation. But I just wanted to roll with this, learn a new language, that kind of thing. First game I'm developing ever, so... This is entity remove me. Godot has excellent tutorials. I would look up Godot, like getting started and similar. It's interesting, Delusion. It is very interesting. I'm doing a vast majority of the coding on this project on stream. So there are definitely moments where I don't know if there's something I can do. Effectively, the last stream and this one, we've spent a lot of time converting one of these objects over to using a kind of lambda pattern for how I set some of the functions. Because class inherit, you can't do interfaces in GD script. You can only use single class inheritance, which was resulting in some like functional overlap between child classes. So I needed to come up with a model for that. I didn't know how to do that last stream. Now we do. Okay, so we now have a signal here. When that entity triggers remove me, we call this guy. And we look at that entity's remove me signal, and it will have let's check that. We're going to call it to remove. We are making sure that we're getting the right entity out of this. We don't want to disconnect the wrong entity. To remove use that elsewhere. Why can't I use it here? Remove me signal name. Yep. Entity remove me. Again, Cheese, there is an excellent tutorial on getting started with making 2D movement in Godot. It will take you through it exactly step by step. It's very straightforward. So we disconnect that signal. We say lost target is equal to true. And we're going to remove our reference to the entity just in case. Technically, this is a dead... technically, this is already a dead reference. Like, if we lose target, we wouldn't be using this anymore. But I don't want this entity lingering because it might come back around. It might get reused. I don't know that that's actually the problem. But we'll see. But we know as soon as it's gone that it's been removed. Okay. So we don't really need get valid entity anymore. So do I need to update it? If I haven't lost target and I don't have an entity, I need to update it. If I have lost target, or technically I have an entity, then I don't need to update it. Not quite accurate, but... revisit that. If we try to get an entity and we don't have it, so we don't have a target and we don't have an entity. This doesn't get overridden. This should never get overridden. We always say remove me here. I think everybody, as they're learning development in various different languages and editors and similar, comes to gather a series of them that they hate. Like, I know plenty of developers that swore by V up and down as an editor, And I think it's terrible. All of the good things that people call out about it are things that like visual IDEs do better. And if you're forcing yourself to do your code in a text console when you don't need to, using a tool that makes that less painful but overly complicated, I just don't know what to say. That seems like bad decisions top to bottom. Should update. Okay, need update entity is what you'd change. So we don't need to change this. If we don't have an entity when we come out of this function, we have lost target. I remember when first learning programming that there was a scenario that the that the school teaching it insisted on also including COBOL in the learning process because they were convinced that that was still the way to go. Um, Geez, Google search Godot tutorials and look at the ones that are on the Godot site. We never need to null the entity here. Because if we ever had an entity and it gets removed, we've already dealt with that. If we've ever had an entity, this happened. If this doesn't get called, there was already a breakdown in the system. But we do need to make sure that this actually gets called when an entity is removed. So we might need to circle back around here. Yeah. And then set tracked entity might do something different. Yeah, COBOL is like an old school database language meant for like it's meant for simplistic like interfaces to machines. So you want like you just want very simple things, and COBOL's decent at that. But trying to extend that use out of its like original use cases gets very hard. It's clunky. So, it had its place in history, just it should stay there. There is technically, I think, scenarios where this won't work, but I think we're still okay. I think we're still okay. Because any entity that enters the field will only leave currently through death. Um, but we will need to look at collision zones to make sure that it is triggering the death of it. So we do send remove signal. We won't need to do this anymore once we get there. Let's look at collision zone. So it should be in our physics tick. So we have entities to delete, we append them. We call remove. Let's look that up real quick. We don't want to double dip, is the thing. It emits the signal, and the collision zone is listening for on remove me. So we disconnect from that. This might actually be a source for some of our problems, because we're remaining connected to that on remove me of that entity. Which could still be okay, but I don't want to... make that a constant at some point. We could just do get method. There. If we ever mess with this function, this will cause, this will not like it. But this will prevent me from having to put a string there. That's good. Okay, so if we trigger on remove me, we will disconnect it. Don't know if we move this to the front to on entity remove me. Don't know if this will pitch a fit, but no matter what, if an entity says remove me, we disconnect it. That way we'll never get that remove again. Yeah. Because then when we remove entity in that collection, we can emit the signal. We're telling everybody we're getting rid of you. Actually, no. In entity remove, we should be doing that. If we ever call remove on it, we are going to send the remove signal. That way, if ever a remove is called, we make sure that we get rid of it. That everything listening gets rid of it. Let's see what explodes. We are getting some retargets. They're getting retargets. I think this is cleaner, but we're still missing something. We are still missing something. Let's look at the targeter pool. Okay, we prop the front. We apply the template that we are using. We're applying the template. We just clone the template. Cloning the template should be fine. Let's see if that's when it starts happening. Me bunches at once. We're in the Q74. Okay, we are now... We just hit this point. We just saw some retarget, though. So when we apply a template... Oh. But no, template entity should be null. Yeah. We've been putting this in the right place? I think this needs to be in all targeters because it isn't a tracking one. Practice, cheese. Do tutorials, keep practicing. That's how you learn to code. Whenever we get an entity, we need to connect this. We need to move this logic into the core targeter. And then anytime we call into set values, if we call set entity and we have an entity afterwards, then that's when we set the targeter. Yes. So right here, we're going to take this and we're going to move it up to targeter. like that. Oh, but it'll override. It'll override and it'll call super. Go. Here we go. Call lost target there. Tracking targeter. All right, need to reload our project. One of the weaknesses of Godot engine is needing to do that. Care about those errors. Entity default. We don't do the connect there. We do the connect here. Function. Now we can call it. Does it explode? We are definitely already getting retargeting, I think. Yep, we're getting retargeting like crazy. Okay, we're still not there. We're still not there. I think this will have to do for the night, though. I think this will have to do for the night. Oh, dear. Okay, so what did we accomplish today? We got our targeters moved over to the Lambda model. This makes it a little trickier to understand at a glance, but as far as constructing them, it's pretty straightforward. Effectively, to use one properly, you need to look at its naming and then look at the catalog to see which functions it should be calling. But the class still contains all the functions that it should be calling. Just have to look, if it's tracking, you look at the corresponding targeter and tracking, otherwise you just look at targeter, find those classes that, or functions that it will call. The thing that we're missing right now is that things that target entities are not dropping their target properly. As in, if they lose target, we don't want them to retarget. unless that type of targeter does that. And the one that we've got is not supposed to. So we'll see from there. We still need to work on that. Which means we're still a ways away from where we want to be. We want to be making new modifiers. But until we have these building blocks working as we go along, I don't want to just ignore it and continue along. That'll just build the tech debt. All right, next stream is on Friday. Haven't decided what we're going to do. If I can get the people together, maybe we'll do some EDF6 on stream. Otherwise, it'll be coding. Well, it might be a different game. Maybe a little to the left or something. Haven't done a puzzle, or Power Wash has a new DLC that's like a Alice in Wonderland themed one. Haven't done that. If you have suggestions, feel free to swing by the Discord. There is a link to my LinkTree in my profile, which includes a link to the Discord, where we have a suggestions forum or just a chat area so that you can suggest that kind of thing, or just voice your opinion on various other stuff. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, and subscribe. It'll help you find the streams in the future, and it helps the channel grow. With all that said, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Good night, everyone.